Hello, and a warm welcome to all of our viewers and listeners today. My name is Mara Kronenfeld. I'm UNRWA USA's Executive Director. And I thank you right now for tuning in to Let's Talk UNRWA, our quarterly live speakers series. Today, I am so honored to be joined by Stephanie Nadi Olson, Executive Producer of the film All That's Left of You. What a beautiful film. I had the opportunity to see it myself a couple of weeks ago. This film follows one Palestinian family across 3 generations from the Nakba in 1948 to the present day. And it offers a powerful reflection on memory, loss, resilience, what it means to be a refugee, and what it means to carry family history forward. Our conversation today will explore why preservation of Palestinian stories matter, what this film shows us about life across generations of displacement, and how storytelling connects directly to the human experience, and in this case, directly to humanitarian action. In particular, the work UNRWA has carried out since 1949 to support Palestine refugees with education, healthcare, shelter, and protection services in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Jordan, in Syria, and Lebanon. We'll also be happy to answer your questions live as we're able to, so please feel free to write them in the comments below and pass this live stream along to any others who may also want to join at this time. I'm already seeing some friends join in. Hello, welcome. And you can tell us where you're writing in from, where you're listening from. That would be great. And so a bit about today's guest. I just am so excited and so happy to welcome Stephanie Nadi Olson. Stephanie is actually an executive producer on All That's Left You and knows a lot about the film, and that's what we're here to talk to her about. And we're also happy to say that she's a host committee member of UNRWA, and particularly our Atlanta Gaza 5K. We're bringing our Gaza 5K to Atlanta, Georgia for the first time on Valentine's Day, April 14th. So Stephanie, as an Atlanta resident, is a host committee member, and we look forward, Stephanie and I, to seeing as many people in the Atlanta area come out to this 5K on February 14th, and I'm sure my team will share the registration link, information link in the chat shortly. So Stephanie's work centers on preserving and amplifying Palestinian stories and ensuring that such stories are told with care, with dignity, and with historical grounding. Stephanie, again, what a pleasure it is to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, Mara. I'm so happy to be here, and hi to everybody who's joining us live.
Excellent. So we'll jump in, and I'll start with some questions I have for you, particularly about your role. What is, for those of us who aren't in this industry, maybe tell us what executive producer means, what that role has meant for you on All That's Left of You, and particularly what drew you as a person and a person with, the history you and your family have. What drew you to this film?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I don't come from the film industry. I'm a tech entrepreneur. And so this is a whole new world for me. 2 years ago, I didn't know what an EP was either. It can mean a few different things, but at a basic level, there are people who fund films, TV projects, plays, things that I have now done across multiple mediums, all in service of telling Palestinian stories and humanizing Palestinians. So you can be a check writer that just helps, fund a project. But that can also turn into much more, right? It can turn into you leveraging whatever your skills are to help support the film or project to be successful. So for me, having a tech background, an entrepreneurial background, I'm able to help filmmakers really think through how to reach their audience. I also have deep marketing experience. So in addition to just kind of helping to fund a film, I like to offer up my skills and background to be helpful in whatever way I can be, right? That might be having a conversation with you, Mara, about the film and being there where Shireen, the filmmaker, can't be in 80 places at once. It might mean helping with the marketing of the film or many various things. But at the end of the day, executive producers really help bring a project to life by funding, which is so important for Palestinian filmmakers and Palestinian film.
Wonderful, wonderful. And do you have familial connections in any way to the subject matter of this film?
Yeah, I mean, so you asked what drew me to the film. All That's Left of You was the first check that my husband and I wrote to support a film. And it was a film, I was introduced to Shireen through a mutual friend, and was a bit overwhelmed at the prospect of like coming in to support a film while it's still being created and there's not a finished product to see or anything like that. But I watched probably when the film was maybe 70% completed as I was brought in. And I got to speak to Shireen, who I feel such like a spiritual kinship with as a fellow Palestinian who was raised here in the US. She was raised in Ohio. I was raised in Georgia. We share this kind of disconnection with our family back home. We share this disconnection to our land. And so I really bonded with Shireen, and like so many people I've met since I've started doing much more activism work. I felt like I was less alone in just knowing her. And then that aside, the film so closely mirrors my family's experience. So the film takes place, it begins in Jaffa, with a grandfather of the story, who's an orange farmer in Jaffa who has his land violently stolen from him, and then he's imprisoned by the Zionists, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to give away too much. Everyone needs to see the film, but this happened to my family, right? So my grandfather was an orange farmer in Jaffa. He had his land violently stolen from him. My father was 5 years old when that happened, and there's a child in the film that's 5 years old. My grandfather was also imprisoned and kidnapped by the Zionist military when he went back to try to retrieve some of my family's belongings. You know, so there was, when I saw this on film, and I'm watching it with my father who lived this firsthand, and he's saying to me, Stephanie, I remember this. I remember these things happening. Like, this is bringing back things that my dad had suppressed for 75 years. And I thought, this has to exist. It has to exist to commemorate what happened to us, to honor what happened to us. And it has to exist at a core level for my children and my grandchildren and my family, because it did happen. And it's so often denied. We're so often dismissed. Our stories were not believed or trusted. So to see it on the big screen and to see it done so well, Shireen is a miracle worker. We thought we just have to get involved.
What an amazing story. You have just a touching, a sad story, but one that has to be told. And I feel right now, like you do, just gratitude to Shireen. We actually didn't call her out here, and I just want to take this moment to say Shireen Davis is the creator, the director of this film, and she also stars in it as Hanan, I believe, the mother of one of, I won't give too much away, but of one of the main characters in the film, and the wife of one of the main characters, and a main character herself. And this is one of a number of films Shireen's brought to the big screen, and that have told stories that need to be told. And this one, above all, has had such a profound effect on so many who, like you said, have seen their own lives here and seen their own history and the history of Palestine refugees humanized in a way that they shouldn't need to be, because these are human stories. But this has absolutely been so powerful in that regard. And I'm so proud to say Shireen Davis is a longtime board member of UNRWA USA, and that shared interest UNRWA USA, our whole team here has, our board has, and I myself have, is to help Americans understand more about the plight of Palestine refugees, about the key work that UNRWA has, the key services that UNRWA has provided for this population, and to help ensure more funding from the United States, especially at this critical time, to UNRWA and to Palestine refugees. So thank you for sharing that touching story, and that very personal story. And I think you've shared, I guess, what this film has meant to you. And has it done anything to help you build a deeper connections to your own roots and history? It sounds like it has, with kind of reconnecting, starting to understand your own personal story and the story of your ancestors better.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back a couple years. You know, I had never been to Palestine, And I had this, like, call it God, spirit, intuitive feeling telling me that once I sold my tech company, that I needed to go home to Palestine and that I would know what I was meant to do next. And it was just this weird kind of gnawing feeling that I had. And this is pre-genocide, or pre the acceleration of the genocide we've seen over the last 2 years. And I went back home with my parents. I took my dad back to Palestine for the first time since the Nakba. And it was quite a disenchanting feeling. You know, we were there in the spring of 2023, and I just wanted to connect with my roots, but it felt so hollow. You know, as soon as we arrived, my father, who was in his late 70s at the time, was detained at the airport for many hours in Tel Aviv. And this level of dehumanization is shown in the film, especially in the final scenes of the film. And it brings up these questions about, like, can we still call this a home? You know, our loved ones and our history that tended to this land for generations, our sweat, our tears, our suffering and agony, it's all been paved over and whitewashed. And in many instances, we aren't even allowed back. So I feel like this film, as well as my activism and philanthropy work in general, has really allowed me to connect with my roots in a way, and with the diaspora in a way, that never would have happened if we weren't all coming together to find justice for Palestine and for our ancestors. And I think, you know, it's kind of shown in the film. It's a theme that, you know, you think about, like, what is home? What is going back to home, which as Palestinians, we all long to do. It's all talked about so romantically and lovingly. But I think also one of the realizations I've had over the last 2 years is that films like All That's Left of You are as much an important piece of the fabric of home as a physical place. You know, my Palestinian friends are my home. UNRWA is my home. Knowing the work that organizations like you all are doing makes me feel at home. Our allies in this fight for justice and freedom are home. And so it gave me another place to feel connected when our home is being actively stripped from us for generations.
Stephanie, that is so moving and beautiful what you've said, and you managed to connect all of that to UNRWA, and kind of why we're here today as UNRWA USA, talking to you, talking about this film, and to kind of make this link a little bit more direct. I'm going to play a short video which really shows how Shireen Davis herself, she'll be speaking, links her film to the important mission of UNRWA and, by extension, of UNRWA USA.
My film, All That's Left of You, follows one Palestinian family across 3 generations, from the Nakba in 1948 to almost today. It's about the humanity of the Palestinian people that's so often missing and omitted from the conversation. It's about the trauma of losing everything and the grace we summon to carry on. But these aren't just stories. They're the lived experiences of Palestine refugees that UNRWA serves every single day. Since 1949, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, has provided education, healthcare, food, and shelter to Palestine refugee families just like the one in my film. UNRWA is the lifeline for children born in refugee camps who deserve hope and dignity and a beautiful future, just like all children everywhere. Right now, UNRWA faces unprecedented challenges, but the need for UNRWA's critical, life and hope-saving humanitarian work has never been greater. Learn more about my film and where you can see it at allthat'sleftofyou.com. And as a proud board member of UNRWA USA, please continue to support UNRWA at unrwausa.org. Thank you for standing with us, for refusing to look away, for not forgetting, even in these darkest moments of our lives, the power of your humanity to resist oppression and injustice. Not for some, but for all.
I still get choked up when I see that, and thank you so much, Shireen, for helping put that together. We are so grateful, and I think that that really, you know, is that statement Shireen made, that this is for all who suffered, all victims, all populations, vulnerable populations, and not just for some, is what, you know, brought me here and brought me to this work. especially given, so much of what you said resonates with the history of my family escaping the Holocaust and my grandfather's sister's family being murdered. It is the protection of all vulnerable populations is why we're here today, and why everything you said has been so extremely meaningful, and why, frankly, I came to this work because it was never again for anybody. And just so grateful to be here with you today, sharing with those listening more about the Palestine refugee experience, about the Nakba, and about generations of persecution, oppression Palestinian families have faced. And just that, because Shireen made this connection so clearly, maybe I can ask you, how did UNRWA's presence working on this film, how did UNRWA's presence show up for you, or even in your trips to the region, whether explicitly or implicitly, in the lives of the families that the movie followed, in your own experience? And in what ways the services of UNRWA that UNRWA has provided since 1949, as Shireen said, education, healthcare, shelter, shape the story being told? Maybe you can share a little bit of your thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, this film actually prompted me learning so much more about my family's history, of which UNRWA is undoubtedly a part. So because of all the trauma that my father and his siblings experienced, they have not liked to talk about the Nakba. But sitting there watching this film with my father and holding his hand and weeping together opened up Pandora's box. So within days, I had more information than I had received in my entire life about my own family's history and their struggle and what they had been through. And I think about my grandmother, who had 4 small children, including a child she was still nursing, when they were forcibly removed from their home and put into tents. And, my family was likely receiving their primary medical care from UNRWA at the time. And my dad talks about the people that came to help them, and that everybody in all these refugees, these 750,000 refugees at that time, who had their land violently taken from them by the Zionists, all thought that this was temporary. Like, we may temporarily need UNRWA for our care and for our primary care. We may temporarily need to get water from the Red Cross, but surely we're going to get to go home, right? Which is what I've just heard from so many Nakba survivors. And so to see UNRWA still existing, still such a necessity for Palestinians 78 years later, is as heartbreaking as it is, gratitude filling, because we shouldn't still need this, but thank God it exists. And I think, to hear those stories from my own family, my grandmother sadly passed away in the refugee camps because, and we have such little information, she wasn't even 30 years old.
Oh.
And we don't know what took her life, but we know that she couldn't get specialized medical care. And we know that she was living through a nightmare with 4 young children. And so, to think about the organizations, and an organization like UNRWA that was there then, that probably touched my grandmother's life in some way, and her children, right? These 4 children that have lost their mother amidst the beginning of what is a 78-year genocide. And half of my family and the Nakba went to Jordan. So my grandfather took his family to Jordan, and for generations, we've lived in refugee camps in Jordan and continued to rely on services from UNRWA. The other half of my family, my grandfather's brother, went to Gaza in 1948. I don't know why the family split up. I don't know, but it's the difference between me sitting here with you today and me being in Gaza. So to see the work that you all are doing is so meaningful, not just for my family in Gaza, but my friends in Gaza. I've gotten to know so many amazing families in Gaza that are desperate for care for their children. I mean, imagine being a parent and your child's out of school for 2 years and they're living with drones every day and running from place to place, and they're getting sick because it's cold. And so to have UNRWA with these kind of wraparound services, I think for these families is just, you can't articulate how meaningful it is. And I think the consistent presence of UNRWA, like the fact that you all have the infrastructure to do the work because you've been there for so long. You've been navigating this nightmare alongside Palestinians for generations. is so important, Mara. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you to the UNRWA staff on the ground in Gaza, in the West Bank, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. You know, to this day, there are 12,000 staff members, Palestinians themselves, facing the same kind of everyday dangers. Fear of being bombed when they walk outside of their house. Many of them having gone through periods of famine, of starvation, not having to be displaced themselves, and yet they still have shown up time and time again for work to serve their fellow Palestinians in Gaza. So really, this is from both of us just huge appreciation to the staff of UNRWA, and who've been subject to so much demonization and frankly propaganda about who they are and what they do.
Yeah, Mara, I mean, I would love to hear you talk more about the work that you all are doing in Gaza and in the West Bank, which, let's not forget about the West Bank, just so people understand, like, what is UNRWA up to on the ground, and how have you been able to maintain this presence?
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to share more because there is so much misinformation, often active disinformation, hundreds of millions of dollars going into active disinformation. You know, we faced it ourselves at UNRWA USA, and we know all the false information, all of the propaganda out there. Really, you know, with the ultimate goal of trying to upend this idea that there are Palestine refugees, upend this idea that there's a right of return for Palestine refugees in international law by mandate of the United Nations, whether UNRWA survives or not. And frankly, to upend the idea of a future sovereign Palestinian state. That is why, if you ask why the misinformation, why the propaganda, that's why it's there, unfortunately. And we, every day at UNRWA USA and at UNRWA, all we can do is be transparent and share the facts, and really happy to do that today. And just one other comment, you know, you had mentioned UNRWA, you know, existing to help Palestine refugees for 78 years, and UNRWA was always its mandate, its creation was with planned obsolescence in mind, with the idea that it wouldn't be needed because there would be a just and durable political solution to the plight of Palestinians by the political parties. Of course, that didn't happen, and that is why UNRWA is still here. We all wish for a day when there is a sovereign Palestinian state, when Palestinians are in control of their own self-determination. UNRWA will not need to exist. We all hope for that day, but UNRWA will not be wiped away by illegal actions of an occupying authority. So UNRWA in Gaza, like I said, 12,000 staff on the ground to this very day, despite what you've heard, despite the Knesset laws, despite the illegal actions of the Israeli government and of the Israeli military, 12,000 staff remain. They are, as we speak, they are providing water, clean drinking water to the population there. They are the primary medical care providers because, as we know, so many medical providers have either been killed, hospitals have been destroyed, and now we know that Médecins Sans Frontières cannot work in Gaza. UNRWA was always meant to be primary healthcare, but UNRWA has had to serve more of the healthcare as, again, as all of unfortunately, the purposeful destruction of the hospital system has been underway. UNRWA also provides the cleanup of camps, these makeshift refugee camps, cleaning essentially the equivalent of a 747, 300,000 pounds of waste every single week. And UNRWA was the primary educator of young people in Gaza, educating 300,000 students between kindergarten and 9th grade. And right now, as safety allows, UNRWA is doing in-person education for 60, 70,000 students each week. We wish that could grow as a true ceasefire takes place. We're not seeing that yet, unfortunately, and also educate some 300,000 people a week via online learning as possible. And finally, UNRWA has been essential in providing psychosocial support to young people and their families. There was just a report out by the University of Oxford of the unbearable conditions for children through the trauma, everything they've witnessed, the injuries. We have 6,000 plus children who've lost one or more limbs. This is the highest cohort, the largest cohort of child amputees in modern history. So these children are facing horrors that they need all of our collective help to help them get over. And those are the ones that are alive. Over 17,000 children have been killed in this genocide. So in the West Bank, UNRWA continues to do similar services. There are about 1 million, just under 1 million registered refugees in the West Bank. About a quarter of those are living in some 19 refugee camps. And UNRWA continues to provide, as possible, education and medical care, while the Israeli laws and Israeli actions on the ground threatened to take away UNRWA's ability to do this. But these brave Palestinian workers on the ground are continuing to do all of these services for those in need. And this is facing all sorts of illegal annexations, the attempt to further bifurcate the West Bank so that there's difficulty in traveling from north to south into Jerusalem. And while 10,000 people have been forcibly displaced, 10,000 Palestinians in the West Bank between October of 2023 and October of 2025. And then finally, we know that Israel has illegally stopped the education of young people in East Jerusalem, something UNRWA had done again for over 70 years, and actually brought in armed officers to stop education of young children. And then the Israeli actors raided the Sheikh Jarrah headquarters of UNRWA with elected officials watching. And this is an absolutely unprecedented, outrageous move on the part of Israel to destroy UN property. This is unprecedented and an absolute travesty that I hope everyone listening understands that what happened at UNRWA will happen to any other international organization in this globe if we don't speak up now and say that this is wrong. Thank you for giving me the chance to share more about the work of UNRWA staff, Stephanie, under excruciatingly difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what your days are like, Mara. I really can't. And you're right. The people doing the work for UNRWA on the ground are heroes. I mean, they are risking their lives every day. They are enduring impossible hardship amidst their own families, and they're still showing up and doing this work. And like I said, I wish we had, the planned obsolescence of the organization had worked out as we had all hoped, but thank God you all are still there to help support these families and do this work. I'm curious, Mara, when I became involved in film, I really viewed storytelling as this lens of humanizing Palestinians because we've been so dehumanized our entire lives and reduced to numbers and, everything else, and terrorists and, whatever people want to call us. Do you feel like the existence of a film like All That's Left of You is transcending storytelling to help bolster the work that you all are doing, or does the storytelling itself help people understand why this work is so important? Like, help me understand the connection from your seat at UNRWA to the work that you're doing in film.
Thank you, Stephanie. I mean, this storytelling, this film goes hand in hand with our mission. It really has been to bring the stories of Palestine refugees to more Americans so they understand their plight. And too often that story, you said it yourself, has been erased. It has literally been paved over in certain settings. And something in the American context has really been sharing kind of a very one-sided and limited and more and more misinformed and disinformed version of that story. And that is something, frankly, it's been a personal mission to share the stories of Palestinians, of the Nakba, of the occupation, ever since I had the chance to travel to the Middle East and North Africa. I had the chance to travel to Palestine, to Gaza, and see for myself. We see storytelling as essential. And we always wrestle, I'm sure, like you, with the verb, humanize, because we're having to humanize humans, having to prove that Palestinians are human beings like anybody else. Just like if you allow me, Bad Bunny got up on the Grammy stages and said about Latin Americans and immigrants, we are not savage. We are just like you and your family. We are no different. To have to say this in this day and age is incredible. And if it's incredible in the sense of why one even has to say this. So if there are stories that tell, like the film, that tell the emotion, that tell those daily injustices and indignities that people have to face, that Palestinians have had to face to this very day, it helps people feel at a visceral level and helps them understand something that maybe they've chosen to push out of their heads because it's too complex. If I speak out, I'm gonna be declared anti-Semitic, which is absolutely false. We need to be critical of the actions of governments wherever they're from. It doesn't mean we're against a religion. And finally, I think something that, and this, storytelling has been a part of our whole team. And I think I see our former director of comms, Leila Mukaiber, on here, who has just been in the audience, who's just been on the forefront of telling these stories. It's been a labor of love for us. And I want to say one story in particular from this film touches me at the deepest level. And I'm curious for you too, just telling the story of your father and your grandfather. You don't see in the news the humanization of Palestinian men. You don't see the tenderness, and that it's particularly acute around Palestinian men, but it goes to Arab men, Muslim men sometimes in this country, and we talk about the children and the women who died and have injured, but the men are somehow assumed to be terrorists or something. And to see the tenderness of the men in this film just was so touching, and so much the experience I had living and working in Palestine and in the broader region. I'm wondering, did that touch you as well?
Mara, I love that you said this, because I get asked, I know you're going to make me cry too, because this was like it for me in the film. There were so many things, to try to understand what my grandparents went through and how it felt for them in real time. And to see that through film I can't put it into words. But I'll tell you a story. I hosted a screening of the film, a private screening for friends and neighbors, and 200 people filled my backyard to watch this film, which is incredible. And I had more than one person come up to me in the days afterwards saying, you know what I realized as I was watching that film? I have never seen an Arab man playing with his children. I have never seen a Muslim man spending time with his family, being a dad, telling stories, playing games. And it broke me, because I know it's true, and I know it's by design. And exactly what you said. I mean, I think we're rightfully outraged and disgusted by what's happening to women and children. But when we only focus on that, we play into this awful racist trope that our men are savages, and that our men are incapable of love, and that our men are all terrorists, and our men, can't be trusted. And this could not be further from the truth. I mean, the people that I'm the saddest for in this world are the people that have never gotten to know a Palestinian family. the people that have never seen a Palestinian man play with his children on the floor, that haven't seen my dad have a water balloon fight with his grandkids climbing around his legs, that haven't seen the pride that my dad takes in his work as a tailor, haven't seen the way that my dad, if I call him right now and say, I need you to drive 6 hours to pick something up for me, like he's gone, you know, like, and it's such a shame. My heart breaks that people don't get to know the love of a Palestinian family and the love of a Palestinian father for their own children. And it's something that this film captures. And if it opens up eyes to the fact that you've purposefully been denied this experience and that you've purposely only been shown Palestinians and Palestinian men, all of us really, in one particular light, what a shame. What a shame. And how much propaganda have you been fed that you think we're this awful monolith and that we've all internalized because it's the air we breathe, these racist tropes about Palestinians.
That is so powerful. If I could take, you have so many powerful statements here, but I want to take that excerpt in particular and just send it around the world. My husband happens to be Arab and Muslim, and I think about this all the time, about what kind of preconceived notions there are, and I think what implicit bias each of us as Americans have, and other places around the world, that we've, like you said, we've just by osmosis sucked in from the atmosphere. And I think it's beholden upon all of us, myself included, to think, what kind of implicit bias am I carrying around with me that makes me assume something about the men, whether it's whether it's African Americans, whether it's Arabs, whether Muslims, whether Palestinians in particular. What am I carrying with me that I have to interrogate? What assumptions? And if there's one takeaway from today, I hope those listening will think about that. I certainly think about it every single day, honestly, in these torturous times. Wow. So let me just say, what do you think, Stephanie, with everything you shared, what's at stake if we're not able to preserve and share Palestinian family stories, and especially at a moment where there are some in our government and some of our government supporters who would even say, and lots of people, even in the tech industry, who would say, for you to say you're Palestinian is in it of itself a racist or a anti-Semitic statement. What do we say about the importance of being Palestinian, of sharing the culture, of sharing the stories, and what's at stake if these stories aren't told or if they're erased?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about this. Like, one of the reasons I feel so compelled to do my activism work publicly is that I don't need a job. And most people in this country are not in that position. I'm an entrepreneur, and so I don't need the approval of other people. And I recognize how much privilege I have in that. And so if I can't speak up, and if I can't say, I am proudly Palestinian, and here's what I believe, and here's what I'm seeing happening, how can we expect anybody to do it? Because it is risky, and it's risky by design for people to do it. But I think what people don't understand is that there is security in numbers, right? And when our presence is being actively erased, when our stories are being actively erased, I mean, you see these brave, heroic journalists in Gaza get targeted and killed by Israel. And within 15 minutes, Instagram's deleted their account and all evidence of everything that they've documented about this genocide. It's gone in minutes. And so it is an active effort to remove the history that we're witnessing right now. And I think that's one of the reasons film is so important, because they can't erase this film. But also we are in this zeitgeist moment where people are paying attention to us. Because Mara, you're right. My entire life growing up in the South, saying I'm Palestinian, people are saying, oh, as soon as they hear it, you must hate Jews. Palestine doesn't exist. That never happened. You're making people uncomfortable. Please don't talk about it. This has been my whole life. And I am not going to shut up now, because if I can't speak up now amidst these horrors to honor my ancestors who gave so much, including my grandmother's life because of this, then how do I sleep at night? And so I don't expect everybody to do what I do, but I do expect everybody to do something. And part of that can be supporting Palestinian stories as they're told, sharing them. I tell people that they don't realize how important it is to normalize caring about Palestine, wearing a Free Palestine bracelet, coming to the Gaza 5K that UNRWA was hosting in Atlanta, wearing a t-shirt, putting the Palestinian flag in your social media profile. Like, these signal to the world that it's okay to care, because you're not the only one who cares. And when you do these things, I walk through the world, people don't assume I'm Palestinian. My mom has blonde hair and blue eyes. So when they see my necklace, when they see my bracelet, I get stopped all the time. Thank you. They're thanking me because they don't know that it's my people. So we're not alone. And these stories have to be told, and we cannot back down. We have this moment where the world is watching us. The world is with us. Most Americans are with us. They just want you to think that we're not, right? And so I think just remember that we have the numbers and you're not alone. And just your presence in acknowledging these stories and sharing them and liking them and commenting on them when you see them does more than you think to make the people who are on the front lines not feel so alone.
100%. And not only do you have the numbers, but we collectively have the truth and transparency and ethics and justice on our side. And no matter how much dirt people throw at us, we know that, and that's what keeps me, doing this work. No matter what anybody says, I know I'm speaking the truth, and I know and it's with the goal of. It's with a humane viewpoint, with humanity in mind, that we all speak this truth, the humanity of all, not just of some. And one thought as you were speaking, I remember, especially because you're in tech, I'd talked to some Palestinians in tech in Silicon Valley were trying to get venture capital, and this was several years ago. They were unable to say they were Palestinian. They would not get venture capital. They had to say Jordanian, or in this day and age. Now of course it's clear all the racism, but this was pre-genocide. Honestly, I was naive. It was shocking to me. And then I also just want to say that one of the reasons we've been able to tell these stories, and in fact, my colleague Hani Al-Madhoun, who's from Gaza, and myself, I don't know where USA, yourself, others who've been able to get in front of the press and say these stories, I always say, is because of people in the back room who are of color, of any minority background, who said, we refuse to be silenced. There's a story out there that's not being told, and we're gonna push our editors, and we're gonna push our producers and say, you've got to go talk to these people who are telling a different story than the popular news is presenting. Right. And thank God for those people who've allowed the truth to be seen by more and more folks. And when people know the truth, they act accordingly.
Yeah, that's right. It's so true.
And I just want to say, before we ask the last question, we were talking about Palestinian Babas, and we have somebody wrote in and say, my dad is my hero since I was a little girl. This is from Layla. He would also travel and go over and beyond to help me. He spent all his life educating and supporting me, my sister and my brother. He gave and still is giving all of his life for us, whether a small task or a big task. He's always there. Even if I want an event, the first number I call is Dad. I love this remark. Thank you, Layla, for sharing with us. I can't tell you how many amazing fathers I got to meet myself in the region, and just how badly the disservices of how they're represented, particularly in this country. So Stephanie, my last question would be, what would you want those who are seeing the film or listening to this conversation, who are interested in engaging more deeply, what would you encourage them to do next? They've seen the film, they've listened to us talk, they've seen other UNRWA USA stories, they're thinking about the Gaza 5K. What would you encourage them to understand more about the history of Palestinians and what they're facing up to this very day?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that this genocide does not happen in a vacuum, right? This is the culmination of decades and decades of propaganda, of racism, of dehumanization of Palestinian people. And there's not a single way to undo all of that, right? Like, we need to fund things like UNRWA so that more Palestinians can stay alive amidst horrific circumstances and have better outcomes for those families where we can. We need to fund film. We need to support film. Like, please go see Shireen's film and please tell your friends. You can go to allthat'sleftofyou.com. You can see where it's showing. But what I encourage people to do is, it can feel overwhelming. Like, I am overwhelmed when I think about the magnitude and the reach of this dehumanization, and the way that our culture is just smashes any dissent on Israel. It can feel quite overwhelming, but what I encourage people to do is find the thing that you can do and do it. You don't have to do everything. If your thing is you have money, but you can't speak out because you're going to lose your job, then donate to UNRWA. If your thing is that you can go see a film and you know a journalist that you can call, or you can go research journalists to get them to see the film, do that. If your thing is that you can call your senators every day and be outraged by the money that we continue sending Israel, do that. Find the thing that you can do, because we need everybody in this fight. So whatever it is that you're able to do, do it. Don't be overwhelmed by the magnitude of work that needs to be done, because if we all do our part, the tide will continue to turn. And again, this is just the most basic things. Like, I encourage my friends and family to put the Palestinian flag in their social media profile. Just be present, just be visible as somebody who cares about this. And so whatever it is that you can do, do it, and encourage your friends and family to do it. And please don't stop talking about Palestine, because the ceasefire is not real. Children are being killed every day. People are still looking for access to food and medicine and education. And we cannot look away from Palestine, and especially its connection to the horrors that are being inflicted upon people in the United States right now.
Wow, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today, for speaking so powerfully, for connecting it to this moment here in the US, and for sharing your story and your connection to the beautiful film, All That's Left of You. Your work reminds us how Palestinian history lives within families, memories, and everyday acts of survival and care, as well as the everyday acts we take in the United States to make sure that people know about Palestine, about Palestinians, about what's going on in Gaza, about the need to tell and to share the stories of Palestinians, and to share their experience. In the U.S., we have an utterly crucial role to play in uplifting Palestinian voices like Stephanie's, and bearing witness to these stories. And for those watching, as Stephanie said, you can find a screening of All That's Left of You at allthat'sleftofyou.com. There are still screenings. Please go and see this film. Please recommend it to your friends and family. And if today's conversation resonated with you, I encourage you also, of course, to support UNRWA USA so that we can continue to sustain UNRWA's life-saving work for Palestine refugees. For over 75 years, UNRWA has been the backbone of humanitarian aid for Palestine refugees. It has been providing essential services, education, health, shelter, psychosocial support, clean water to Palestinian families across Gaza, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. Almost all UNRWA staff are Palestine refugees themselves and battle, as we mentioned before, with their own lived experience of displacement, of loss, of trauma. Despite this, despite even losing their own family members, they show up every single day and serve their communities. So long as they are showing up every day, we can show up and support UNRWA, and your support, again, helps UNRWA continue to do this important work. You can learn more about what action you can take for Palestine refugees at UNRWAUSA.org. My colleagues will put it in the chat, UNRWAUSA.org. Thank you again, Stephanie, and everyone who tuned in today. Don't forget to follow us on social media, UNRWAUSA.org, to stay in the loop. And please keep your eye on Palestine, as always, as Stephanie said, and continue to show your solidarity with Palestine refugees by supporting organizations like UNRWA and UNRWA USA. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everybody, especially those in Stephanie's hometown of Atlanta, we hope to see you at the next Gaza 5K in Atlanta on February 14th. Let Palestine be your Valentine. Come hang out with all of us, at least in the morning. You can go to your sweetheart in the afternoon. The signature Gaza 5K was started in 2012 to support mental health for Palestine refugee children in Gaza. Can't think of a time where this is needed more than now, 27 months into these atrocities. We're so excited to bring this event, which is a day of family, of solidarity, of community, of hope, and of love, to Atlanta for the first time ever. You can learn more about this at gaza5k.org. Again, Stephanie, I can't thank you enough. I look forward to seeing you in about 10, 11 days. And thanks to all who joined us.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you, everybody.